Hello everybody, BL Carter here, coming back with another video. This time we're talking about the recent ICE raids in Mississippi, and actually the ICE raids overall. Now, we know immigration has been a hot topic. We know there will be an impact of more brown-skinned folk in the country. From a black person standpoint, that's just another group to skip us in line, or better still, to stand on the black person's neck as a collective. From an electoral standpoint, that's another group to add to the electoral base for each side to have a crack at boosting their position come election day. But I'm not here really to talk about the logistics of how they get into the country, what they do when they get here, that sort of thing. I want to talk about the logistics of these actual raids, and more so specifically, really, the companies that hire these people. Now, you and I, we're born here. You can't get a job washing cars, collecting trash, digging ditches, or anything else, even pet sitting, part-time, unless you produce state ID and a social security number. So, companies also, the federal government has it set where companies legally cannot hire anyone unless they have permission from the federal government, and that's usually done through the E-Verify system. So my question is, how are these people hired? I don't know how they were hired. I don't even know the method that was used, whatever logistics, paperwork, whatever was done, I don't know. It's not a big question for the video, but it is definitely a question. But these recent raids in Mississippi, they were primarily migrant workers. So they were all gathered up for deportation. But the fact that they're migrant workers and they work primarily in the poultry farm, chicken and, I guess hens and whatever, most of the local people don't want to do that. Or if they do it, they're going to want a reasonable wage. The migrant workers will accept a lower pay. Or they will get in the hen house or chicken house with all those chickens and deal with the smell and deal with them pecking and sticking them and whatever other casualties may come with the job. But again, what about the companies that hired them? So in the process of these raids, yes, those companies, they'll lose money. Some may even go out of business because they may not be able to fill the positions. And what does that do? That's going to increase the product price here in the country because you have fewer supply. So the demand is going to increase, which will drive up the cost of the product. So to keep the company from folding, we don't do anything to the company. We just take the employees and tell them get some more, and that's it. We take a large number of employees at one time, which means the company in effect has been rendered disabled for some period of time, at least until they can replace those employees. But we don't hold the companies accountable. Do they go through the E-Verify system? No, we give them a chance to gather proper employees. I ask, how many others are given a chance to do the right thing if they've done something wrong? Do small businesses get the opportunity to correct whatever it is they've done wrong if they hired an employee they weren't supposed to or didn't follow some other law? Do we just go to them and snatch away the employee or tell them what the problem is and allow them to fix it? No, oftentimes they'll go right in. They've got warrants. They've got all these documents as to how much fines and back monies and whatever else owed. It's money. But from these companies, like the ones in Mississippi, and nobody said anything about any charges or anything being brought up to for the companies. What about the amount of effort being put into actually pursuing charges or arrests or something for the companies? Now, our current president has been very vocal about immigration. He wants his wall. He doesn't want the immigrants in. They're bad. They're all kinds of rapists and murderers, and he done labeled them to be the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst. And I'm not saying they are or they aren't. I'm just saying that's his position. Yet, they're that bad, but he's prosecuting even fewer companies that are hiring these employees than his predecessor. And his predecessor was allegedly too soft on immigration. So if the predecessor was too soft, yet the current president is harder and he's making sure the people are rounded up and deported, he's not doing anything with the companies. So let's talk some numbers. And again, these numbers, I did not manually do these numbers myself. I'm taking this information from different sources, and so keep that in mind as well. Duke University and the University of Virginia collectively or jointly maintain a database, and it's called the Corporate Prosecution Registry. This registry, it tracks, the cases where the companies, instead of the individuals, but the companies are charged with violating federal law. And it includes cases that are resolved, like if there's a plea agreement, if there's some kind of deferred agreement, or it wasn't even prosecuted at all. So this particular registry, in looking at it from 2009 to 2016, there were 88 cases where the actual companies themselves were prosecuted in some way. Whether there was a full prosecution all the way through, whether there was a plea agreement, deferred, whatever it was, there were 88 cases. From 2017 until today, 5 cases till today from a president who is supposedly more tougher on immigration. Another database, Syracuse University maintains this one. It's the Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse. And they watched federal data for a 1-year period from April 2018 through March 2019. And during that time, they found 0 companies prosecuted for knowingly hiring undocumented workers. 0. So with all the hoopla about prosecuting immigration offenses, some don't quite sound right. Now, looking at an MSN article, there was more than 300% increase in investigations. So if there's more than a 300% increase in investigation, the assumption would be there would be a large enough increase in the actual prosecutions. And this includes federal audits to determine whether the companies were hiring undocumented immigrants between 2017 and 2018. Now, that's according to ICE. Those records, those numbers came from ICE. But now the criminal arrest, the number of times they arrested a manager, not the corporate people, but the managers at these companies, doubled almost from 59 in 2017 to 100 in 2018, according to ICE. So according to ICE, since the current president has been in office, they have done about a 300% increase in the investigations, and the number of arrests of managers, local managers on site, have doubled. But ICE doesn't have any stats on the number of companies at the corporate level that are held accountable. Those stats come elsewhere, and those stats show us in 1 year from Syracuse 0. From Syracuse 0, and then from the Virginia database 5. And that's over a 2-year period. So, this thing that happened in Mississippi, 680 people, they say were working illegally at the facilities in Mississippi. But again, no charges were filed against the companies. Now, that doesn't mean charges are not pending. Or they're in the process and, it's just a matter of serving it. They can still be added later. But here's a thought. When you and I are arrested, or when we're investigated, they do all their investigating, and they come in with everything and they're ready to file charges immediately and take action. They don't come in with the intent to, okay, well, let me arrest you, let me put you here, and then, I'll let you know in a year or two or 6 months down the road, let me do my investigation and decide if I'm going to file charges against you or not. Part of the investigation is to get all that information so you know what you're working with. So I dug a little deeper. The Washington Post, has spoken to more than 40 undocumented former Trump workers. Some of them said they were pressed to work extra hours without pay, or the supervisors urged them to obtain false documents in order to be able to work. So, of course, after an internal audit, whatever, Trump fired at least 18 of the undocumented workers in January 2019 now. He just fired 18 of them. And the primary reason was that their papers were fraudulent. So, I don't know, this immigration stuff, that raid and how it's being handled, it's a bit troublesome. There's been debates in the legal circles about the effectiveness of prosecuting corporations and, whether, putting the executives in jail really will make a difference and be a real deterrent. Whether if you prosecute a company for the bad behavior, the entire company for the bad behavior of, just a few bad executives, it's unfair to the shareholders because they're going to have to bear some of the cost, all of the costs, the shareholders actually. Some people say, the threat of hefty fines and the embarrassment of the corporation and the news media and all that other stuff. And possibly if you charge them with it and just get them to plead guilty and let it go with that, that would be a deterrent from them to do it again. Well, here's my question. Is that applied to everybody across the board, or it's only applied to certain corporations? Now, if you really want to stop this immigration stuff, then you have to address it from all directions. You deal with the migrant workers, you deal with the actual workers that are working, you deal with management on site, you deal with corporate. All of them, not just one or two, and leave the top people. As far as I'm concerned, well, to ask you this. When they wanted to stop black people from rising to their potential, what did they do? They attacked them from all directions, generationally. And the tactic worked. So, if you attack someone from all directions and the tactic works, why not apply that same tactic to your other issues? We got the immigration stuff going on, attack it from all directions. Corporate tax evasion, attack it from all directions. Racial hate crimes from all directions. Police brutality from all directions. You can't just hit one arm of it and leave all the other arms continuing to fling and do whatever it is they want to do, because you're not addressing the issue. All you're doing really is pushing them from doing it one way to doing it another way. So, in my opinion, you attack them all. If you get the company, the entire company, yeah, the shareholders, they're going to have to burden some cost. But truth be told, they're shareholders. They had a right to question what was going on at some point. They usually have a right to do periodic searches, not searches, but visits and tours of the facilities and stuff like that. If they chose to just attend shareholder meetings a couple times a year and collect their checks, that's on them. They should have protected their investment a little longer, a little better. It may serve as a deterrent, but it's going to force those shareholders to police their own executives, managers, etc. So they don't go through this in the future. You take some money from them, they're going to be at those meetings. They're going to constantly be involved. They're going to know what's going on because they don't want to lose any more money. Now you deal with the executives as well. They're responsible for running the company. Not just the local managers on site, which is, in the past that's been the case. The local managers are the ones who, they're doing the day-to-day. But the executives still override them. They pass down the rules. They, do that. They do all the running of the company. They get paid big bucks to take on those responsibilities. So that means they should also bear the consequences if those under their charge do not do what they're supposed to do. Either they should have been up on it, fired them, or made them get it cleaned up. But they did neither. Thus, they should be held accountable as well. Why not put a few of them in jail? Hit their finances individually as well. That won't happen going forward. Because when they spend 30 days, 60 days, 90 days in jail, away from the lifestyle, away from the wife and kids, or husband and kids, or whoever it is, and got to pay back some money, they will do things different going forward. And then you still have the local people. You still have the managers on site who are allowing this to happen, who are helping get fraudulent paperwork or accepting the fraudulent paperwork. And then you have the workers themselves. And they have to be dealt with. And honestly, if they're here illegally, send them back. Send them, their kids, the whole family, send them back. You take what others have, others here, when they get into, they break a law, you take everything that they have. We don't just sit and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to let you keep your stuff, and I'm just going to get you and your stuff and send you somewhere. Or I'm going to let you have all your stuff, and you're going to go home and you're going to be locked in your house for 6 months. No. We prosecute them. We take their assets, anything we can, to cover the cost of prosecution, to cover restitution, to cover, whatever the expenses are. And I hate it for the kids. It's not fair. But they knew, their parents should have known that when they took that risk. But here's again. Does anyone think of the kids of all the people here who are arrested, who are here legally or born here by the natural citizens, who are arrested for whatever it is? We don't think about their kids. They took risks as well. We don't think about the impact to their children. No one says, let the wife, you take a drug dealer. No one says, okay, let the wife and the kids keep the house, the car, and the money in the bank, and we'll just take you to jail and, let you do your 10 years. No, they take you to jail. They make you do your 10 years. They take the house, the car, the money in the bank, and, they'll go so far to track that money to the point where if you put the house in mom and them name, they're coming to get that house too. They're going to figure out a way to follow that money to get whatever assets you were able to acquire. They're going to take all that too. We're not doing this with the undocumented workers. Now you spend a whole year and other investigations take longer. I would hope that you track down, you followed how they're doing their money, how they're doing their banking, what assets they may have purchased, even if it's just a car. If it was purchased inappropriately, illegally, then it should be taken just like you do the drug dealers or, the regular people that are here that are doing stuff and having their things taken from them. So, I just think it's inappropriate or unfair that people who are here, citizens, break laws for whatever reason, and oftentimes it's out of desperation. Oftentimes it's out of poverty. Can't find another job. Kids need food. Their mindsets have been so messed up with these attacks on them in the hood and everything else to where they can't even see any different. And whatever they manage to acquire As soon as you catch them doing one thing wrong, you're going to take everything. Whereas we got all these folk over here who are illegal, so they're criminals from the jump because they're illegal. And we just going to take them, deport them, maybe prosecute or whatever. But whatever they've acquired, they get to keep, or their families get to keep. And then we get to figure out what we're going to do with the children, the families and the children, because they're in school, they've, adjusted to life, or, they're traumatized seeing their parents ripped out of their arms. You know what? And it is very traumatizing to see, well, not the parents ripped out of their arms, they're being ripped from their parents' arms, so to speak, or to watch their mom or dad put in handcuffs and taken away. But again, how many here break laws and have to experience the same thing? And do we take into consideration that experience for their children? No, we don't. We tell the parent should have thought better and acted better and did better, and their child would not have that experience. Same thing with the migrant workers. I don't believe it's appropriate to apply a different set of standards. One other thing we do have to think of, although these migrant workers are working jobs that those of us currently here either are not qualified for, don't want to do, whatever the case may be, their children are here. Their children go to school. They oftentimes, their families, the spouses and the children, get social services, health care, free schooling, free lunches, the different programs, whether it's actual cash welfare, housing assistance, just the myriad of programs. And then those kids get to grow up, they get to get education, and they get to get into more of the skilled work. So while the migrant worker parents may not be taking the skilled jobs, they're preparing their children, and their children are getting in place, and they're going to come and take the skilled jobs 15 years down the road. So in the long run, it still does affect them taking the jobs of Americans here. And oftentimes we lose sight of that when we say they're not taking the jobs, they're doing jobs that no one else wants to do. Yeah, the migrant workers, but the kids are a different story. That's my take on these ICE raids. Let me know what you think.